Our first speaker has over 38 years of experience and has served in key leadership positions at the platoon to the Department of Army level. He has been stationed around the world to include combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce the Chief of Staff of the Army, General James McConville.
Well, thank you. I hope you can all hear me. It's great to be with you today. I really wish we could be there in person, but we live in challenging times. And I just want to I cannot be more proud of what our Army is doing, what our soldiers are doing. What I would say is, we haven't seen times like this, and I don't know if we've ever seen times like this. Great power competition, conflict in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and many other places around the world. COVID affecting everything that we do. We got soldiers fighting wildfires, assisting in recovery from hurricanes, and the social unrest that's going on throughout the world. So what I'm going to do today is just take some time. We'll lay out some of the things of what's going on in the Army, where we're going, because it affects all of you. And then I'll take some time for questions. And so if you go, the first slide you see, you should just go to the next slide, and you'll see philosophy and attitude. And I see them coming up right now. And so what I'd like to start is with really, at least from the Secretary and I, what the philosophy is. And we like to say people first and winning matters. And people first is the philosophy. And the philosophy is that, if we get the people right, if we get the right people in the right place at the right time, if we have an Army that is cohesive teams, where everyone treats everyone with dignity, respect, everyone takes care of each other, we represent the diversity of the nation, and everyone feels included, everything else follows. And, when you sit at the highest levels, it's all about the people. And when I'm talking about the people, I'm talking certainly about our soldiers, but from all three components: regular Army, National Guard, and reserves. And what I've seen, especially for National Guard and reserves, what they've done over the last 6 to 9 months is absolutely incredible. Just incredible what they're doing around the nation and really around the world. But it's also our families. We have an absolute requirement to take care of our families. We enlist soldiers, but we retain families. We have tremendous Department of the Army civilians, and some don't get to see what they do. We have over 250,000 civilians that really help us generate the force, and they are incredibly important. Then it's our soldiers for life, our retirees and veterans, who I give 2 missions to. So if there's any retirees or veterans out there watching this, I'm not going to give you 3 things because you're retired or you're a veteran. I'm only going to give you 2 things to do. And I need you to hire and inspire. I need you to hire our soldiers as they leave the Army after successful tours. I need you to inspire other young men and women to serve. Tell them your story. Tell them what it was like to be in the Army. Tell them, what a great opportunity it is to be part of a team where you have purpose, when you have purpose to be part of something bigger than yourself, when you're on the most respected team in the country. And as we all know, that the Army's an escalator to success. So I'd ask your help on inspiring young men and women to serve. The Army priorities: readiness, modernization, reform. We absolutely have to be ready. And, when we talk about the maneuver conference, this Army has to be ready to fight and win the battlefield. 82nd found that out on New Year's Eve. For me, that was the first time, at least in my experience. I've done lots of EDREs. I've done lots of rapid deployments. I've seen them. But that's the first time I've seen a cold start, where basically we called them up on New Year's Eve day and said, we need you in Iraq yesterday. And they did a great job of getting there. And very proud of their efforts, and a lot of the other forces that demonstrated that they are ready to fight and win the battlefield. So we can never take our eyes off of readiness. And I know that General Garrett's going to talk a lot more about that. But part of readiness is making sure that our soldiers, our non-commissioned officers have time to do their jobs. And, you know, what's really important, if you go back a slide, I'm still, you know, on the readiness side, you're going to see that the Secretary, myself, the Sergeant Major, General Garrett, really when we talk about readiness, we're talking from bottom up. We've got to slow down the op tempo, the higher level type exercises to give soldiers, non-commissioned officers, and junior leaders the time to get their individuals, their squads, their platoons, and companies at a high state of readiness. And we really need to focus on that because that's where the fights are going to be won. They're going to be won at that platoon and company level, and we need to make sure that they have the time to be highly trained, disciplined, and fit. In modernization, I'm going to talk a little more about that, but we've got to modernize the Army. We're in great power competition, and the way you avoid great power conflict is through strength. Peace through strength, as President Ronald Reagan said, and I believe in that, and I'll talk to you a little more about modernization. And then we talk about reform. You know, we have a lot of industrial age processes in the United States Army, and we need to move in the information age. Some of the processes are agricultural age. And, you know, if we're doing things the same way we did 40, 60, 80 years ago, with the technology we have today, we have to take a look at that and move into the information age. And I need all your help on doing that. And winning matters. Winning matters to me is an attitude. It's an attitude that when we send your squad, your platoon, your company, your division, your Army, or whatever organization you're in somewhere, we're not sending you to participate. We're not sending you to try hard. We are sending you to win. There's no second place or honorable mention in combat, and winning matters. That's what American people expect, and you win through your people. And you know, sometimes if you're thinking about it, some people go, "Hey, wait a minute, Chief. You know, my job is I'm in recruiting. I'm not out there defeating the enemy. What we have to do for each organization is define what winning looks like. You know, winning looks like for a recruiter is getting extraordinary young men and women to serve in the Army. Winning looks like maybe in the motor pool, making sure that all your tanks and Bradleys and vehicles are ready to go. And we have to define what winning looks like for our troops and give them the time and the resources to accomplish that. Next slide, please. And so, the strategic environment. You know, we're operating under a national defense strategy. It's a very, very complex strategic environment that we live in. We talk about great power competition. And we talk about great power competition, we're talking about competing with China and Russia. And I need to add, great power competition does not mean great power conflict. Now, it could, if people make mistakes, if we're weak, if we're not strong, but we got to have competition into the future, and we need to know how to operate in competition below the level of armed conflict. And you know, as you look around the world, Iran has not gone away. North Korea is still there, and we still see violent extremists operating throughout the world, doing the things that they do. The other thing that's made the strategic environment, the operational environment, quite frankly, the tactical environment, much more difficult is COVID-19. It's an invisible enemy. It's always there. It can make our soldiers sick. It certainly makes things much harder because we've got to protect the force before we protect the nation. And I'm real proud of what everyone's doing to get back to training. You know, we've got to be ready. And, you know, we can't telecommute to combat. So we've got to train. We've got to bring new soldiers in. We've got a combat training centers running. West Point is running. ROTC is running. And it's a lot harder. It's a lot more difficult. We're doing exercises, maybe not at the same level we did before, but we have got to be ready for the future. Next slide, please. And so, you know, when we look at the future, and this is what I argue is that the Army needs to transform right now. And I would suggest that the Army basically transforms every 40 years. It did this in the 1940s when General Marshall, who had my job, got the Army ready for World War II and created one of the greatest armies in the world at that time, and totally transformed an army, and it allowed us to defeat Nazi Germany and imperialist Japan. And then for some of the older people that may be watching this, myself included, the Army transformed during the 1970s, 1980s. And, you know, we talk about modernizing the Army, but when we talk about modernizing the Army and transforming the Army, it's just not new equipment. In fact, that's, you know, necessary, but it's not sufficient. And so during the late 1970s, 1980s, we came up with a new doctrine called air-land battle. This is how we were going to fight, and this is how we're going to win. We came up with new organizations. We learned from some of the failures that we had, the Ranger Regiment, the 160th, our special mission units, who do so well for us today and routinely conduct incredible operations that we couldn't even imagine years ago, came out of the ashes of Desert One in Iran when we tried to rescue our hostages. And, you know, we learned from that. Now we have these great units. We stood up the combat training centers. You know, we have world-class combat training centers right now at the National Training Center, Joint Readiness Training Center, and over in Germany at JMRC. And, you know, that is where we have been able to train our forces in the type of fighting that we anticipate and give multiple repetitions in making our units as good as they can be. It is incredibly important development, and they continue to do that today. And really for the combat training center, what we want and we see is a shift to large-scale ground combat operations where we're contested in every single domain. You know, I would suggest that, you know, in the past, you know, in irregular warfare, counterterrorism, counterinsurgency, tested on the ground, certainly, not too much in the air, not in cyber, not in space, and certainly not in the sea. And, you know, as we send units to combat training centers, we want to make sure that they're getting contested in every domain that they will have to fight in. So that's a change that's going on right now. And then the big five, or the modernization programs, the Abrams tank, the Bradley, the Apache, the Black Hawk, and the Patriot. And there were other systems, but they don't fit on one hand. So we just have the big five. And, you know, what we've done over the last 40 years is incrementally improve these systems. And they are the world's greatest systems that we have today. The Abrams M1, A2, SEP, version 3, version 4 is not the same tank that we had with the M1. The Bradley certainly not. The Apache Echo model version 6 is not the same as the A model, and on and on. But what we've done over the last 40 years is incrementally improve those systems. And now we need to transform systems and come out, because we're starting to run out of leathers, or running out of versions. And really every 40 years, you've got to upgrade your weapon systems so you have overmatch with the competitors that you're competing against. And what's really key was the all-volunteer force. We take that for granted now, but maybe some of the older people in the audience, they realize that when we went to the all-volunteer force, that was a big deal, really big deal. And a lot of people didn't think that would work, but it's worked over the last 40, 50 years or so. And it's really given us the non-commissioned officer corps that is the envy of every single Army in the world, and that we're depending on. So let's move forward, transformational change, and talk a little about where we're going. Let's go back to that slide. I'm not done yet. You go back, because I'm moving over to the right side, so we'll be fine. Okay, so now let's talk about today. You know, 40 years later, it's 2019. We're transforming the Army, and that begins with doctrine and how we're going to fight, and concepts. And so the concept that's being developed at the joint level that we'll all use is a joint all-domain operations. And our contribution to that is multi-domain operations. And what this envisions is we will be contested in every single domain, on the land, in the sea, in the air, in cyber, and in space. And it also talks about, competition phases and resolving conflict and how we'll have to operate in the future. And a new concept is developing, led by the Air Force, Joint All-Domain Command and Control. And we've even added a C to that because we think it's going to be very, very important that our coalition partners are all integrated into our command and control systems, so we can work that as we go forward. We're coming out with a new concept of convergence, and what convergence talks about is really taking our people, taking our weapon systems like command and control systems, information and terrain, and bringing it all together, not as a linear product, but as a integral product that's going to give us the capability to tie all our sensors and shooters together. They'll give us the match. So every sensor, every shooter will be able to communicate. We'll be able to pass data from machine to machine, from person to person, and we'll be able to do things that we were never able to do before. We just put out a white paper on that, and you're going to start to see that develop over the next year or so. And so as we move to transform the Army, we're developing new types of organizations, a multi-domain task force. And the purpose of the multi-domain task force, people want to know exactly what it is, what it looks like. We're in the process of experimenting, designing this organization. It's being designed out of JBLM. But the intent is we will have an organization that can operate below the level of armed conflict and also be in a position to deter or fight and win if we do come to armed conflict. Below the level of armed conflict in the competition phase, the multi-domain task force will be able to provide long-range precision effects. And what do we mean by long-range precision effects? We mean it'll be able to do intelligence operations, it'll be able to do information operations, it'll be able to do cyber, electronic warfare, and space operations. And as a deterrence force, it will have long-range precision fires in the future that can penetrate integrated air and missile defense systems that can destroy surface targets at long range, and also be able to sink ships and establish an anti-access area denial capability that our competitors already have. Many of you are familiar with the Security Force Assistance Brigades. We've stood up 5 in the active, 1 in the National Guard, and these are in tremendous demand around the world right now. Very, very important and how we're going to engage. I'm going to talk a little about how we engage in competition, but they are in very, very high demand. Every COCOM wants them. They can't get enough. And then on cyber command reorganization, we are learning how our competitors are using information and disinformation to influence populations around the world and in our population. And we're going to need to understand this environment. We're going to have to compete in this environment at the same time, realizing that we are a democracy, that we must protect, freedom of the press, and how we and really a firewall with how we do business in the United States, which a lot of our competitors don't care about, nor do they have to deal with. And as far as training, where we had DIRT combat training centers before, we're going to take advantage of the information age. We have a synthetic training environment being developed. We're developing cyber ranges so our cyber forces can train. We're going to use augmented reality and virtual reality to allow our soldiers to get reps on targets and missions before they actually have to go into combat. And then on the modernization side, we are changing our priorities for great power competition. Long-range precision fires, #1 priority in great power competition. Fires are extremely important. We're developing a tactical capability with extended range cannon artillery basically doubling the range of canning artillery and even maybe more. At the operational level, we're developing a precision strike missile system that is going to go in excess of 400 kilometers, and that will be able to hit surface targets and eventually sink ships. And then above that, at the strategic level, we've had a very successful hypersonic test and developed the hypersonic missiles, and we're also developing mid-range systems that'll be able to penetrate integrated air and missile defense systems and also sink ships. And that's what's coming into the future. The next generation combat vehicle is going to replace the Bradley, and we're also developing remote control vehicles so we can do man-unmanned teaming on the ground in the future. And as far as future vertical lift, we have 2 aircraft that are in the process of being developed. One is a future attack reconnaissance aircraft, and the other is a future long-range assault aircraft. And that will give us the support that our soldiers need on the ground, both to employ forces at long ranges and also to conduct close combat attacks and support our soldiers on the ground in ways that we could never do before with the range and speed that these aircraft, they're not helicopters, will have. The Army network is going to tie together our soldiers on the ground with an integrated tactical network. We're going to be tying sensors and shooters together with integrated air and missile defense brigade combat systems that tying everyone together. This will be on the ground and also take advantage of what's going on in space. And the air and missile defense in incredible high demand. And I just got to highlight how proud I am of our Patriot units. They are the most highly deployed units. They are doing incredible things to protect our soldiers overseas. And we are doing a lot in the air and missile defense business, starting with an integrated brigade battle command system that's going to tie all our sensors and shooters together. So no longer will Patriot just be dependent on a Patriot radar. It can use Sentinel. It can tie in other radars. And then at the same time, there'll be other shooters that we can engage enemy air and missile defense with as we move forward. We're doing things with lasers. We're doing things with high-powered microwaves. We're coming out with mobile SHORAD for our ground forces. We just made a decision to start fielding mobile SHORAD. And, we realize in the future we'll be contested from the air, and we're going to have to defend that. We're getting ready to field Iron Dome as an interim with something to come to the future. So we are doing an awful lot in air and missile defense. And then, since you're at the Maneuver Center, you guys are all doing some great work on soldier lethality. The integrated visual augmentation system is what I consider transformational. It's going to give us, our troops, incredible capability, not only with night vision, but the ability to train, rehearse, and be much more lethal on the battlefield. And you're also developing 2 weapon systems to replace the M4 Carbon and to replace the SAR, which again are going to have incredible lethality and really change the way our infantry and combat armed soldiers on the ground operate. And last and certainly not least, and what I consider, I talk about people first, but I'm talking about people what we're doing, the people business last. But we are moving from an industrial age personnel management system to a 21st century talent management system. And what that means is, an industrial age system treats everybody as an interchangeable part. We don't think that'll work in the future. We've surveyed the millennials and the Zers that we're competing for to come into the Army, and we're going to have to compete for their talents. And not only have to compete for their talents, we're going to have to make sure we know what they are. So we know what their knowledge, we know what their skills are, we know what their behavior are, and quite frankly, we know what their preferences are, which is kind of blasphemous in the Army, because we believe if we get them in the right place at the right time and they're passionate about what they're doing, they'll do much better at that. So what does that mean? We're putting together an integrated, or we're implementing an integrated personnel and pay system. And what that's allowing us to do is to put all 3 components on one system. Historically, we've had 3 different personnel and pay systems for our regular Army, for our National Guard, and for our reserves. And I can envision the future where people move back and forth between components based on requirements, skills, and even preferences. I can envision where, we incentivize people with the right skill sets, and they may be paid more than someone that has the same rank and the same MOS as they do. I can envision longer assignments, stabilization. I can envision us with this system managing the individual talents of each soldier to get them in the right place at the right time. And, and that's what we're trying to do. And part of that is the Army Talent Alignment Program is what I would call a poor person's attempt to start to get the force ready for this transformational system that we're putting in place. Now people actually will be aware of what jobs are available, and they can compete, and they can actually get hired for key jobs by the leaders in those organizations. And last, and we're doing many, many more things. I can take some questions if you're interested in it, but it's really the command assessment program. We started with the battalion command assessment program. And what drove that was we did some analysis on how we were picking leaders. And I see battalion command as the most consequential position, leadership position, really, of our officers in the Army. And I see that because they influence 600 to 1,000 soldiers over their term. And many of you out there can probably remember your first battalion commander, good or bad. And those who stayed in tend to have inspirational commanders that inspired them to be like them and stay in the Army. Others may have not and stayed anyways. And there's many that may be out of the Army right now going, if I had the right battalion commander, maybe I would have stayed. But what we found was the way we were picking battalion commanders was that we were spending about 2.5 minutes on their files. And, for such an important job, we just didn't think that was right. We were spending more time assessing a private for the Ranger Battalion than we were for our battalion commanders. And those of you who've gone off to business, and you would never hire someone based on looking at their resume for 2.5 minutes without some type of interview. So we've got good feedback on that program. We liked it so much that this year we're running the Colonel's Command Assessment Program. We're also running a program for our project managers in the Acquisition Corps. Each will be different and tailored to the skill sets desired. The Sergeant Major's working on it, excuse me. The Sergeant Major is putting together a pilot for Command Sergeant Majors and First Sergeants within units, because he believes that to be very, very important. And so as you move in the future, we've made a lot of changes from performance-based promotions to merit-based promotions, and we're putting them all into place because we want to make sure we're competing for the best talent in the Army. Next slide, please. So a lot of talk about, we always like to talk about how we fight. I think that's incredibly important. But when we go out to the COCOMs, and some of you are from the COCOMs, what we really want to try to do is take the Sun Tzu model, is to avoid fighting unless we have to. And we are in great power competition. We don't want endless wars, but I believe we're going to have endless competition. And the way we avoid war or conflict is by being strong. And what this slide shows is some of the things that are part of our kit bag, so to speak, or things that we're doing in theater that each of you may contribute to, that we think are very, very important in great power competition. So if you start from at least my left, maybe you're right, however you're looking at it. Training, one of the things that I've learned as a chief is, training allied and partner leaders is extremely, we call it IMET, the International Military Education Training Program. But as I go around the world and I meet with chiefs of staff or chiefs of defense or senior leaders in the military, those that have been to our school, the Command General Staff School, those that have been to the War College, those that have been to the Captain's Career Course and our training, they have a much better appreciation for what we're trying to do. They have much better appreciation for interoperability. And I think this is one of the key tenets that we need to actually increase as we move in the future to make sure that we have strong allies and partners. And, next is on the security assistance, providing security assistance. Some of that is in the realm of foreign military sales, foreign military funding, and those type things. But we're not in business to sell, industry or whatever. But what we find, at least I've found, is when other countries are using our equipment, the interoperability, the ability to advise and assist is much, much stronger. And many of our partners we deal with, they are very, very interested in using our equipment. And if it's done right, it can lower the cost for us and also increase interoperability. So there's certainly value in looking at that. The advise and assist role is extremely important. We want to build the capacity and capabilities of our partner. We have some great organizations do that. Certainly our security force assistance brigades. Our special forces have been doing that for a long time, extremely well. And our National Guard, with its state partner program, is extremely well received across the world when I travel to countries. And many, many countries are very, very proud of the relationship that they have with states. And again, all this is the ability for us to interact with our partners. And then to combine exercises, the Defender Series, and some of the other things, the ability for them to go to our CTCs and everything else is very, very important. Then a couple of things that are kind of in blue, because they're things that we're doing to help us compete. The calibrated force posture, we're in the process now in the Pacific and in Europe of calibrating, what type of forces we have forward, what type of pre-positioned stocks are forward, where we are in relationship with partners, what type of forces, are they rotational, are they permanent, are they episodic? We're working all through that in the regions that we are competing. I talked about the new organizations we're standing up, and I talked a little about convergence. But all these are really critical to how we're going to compete in the future. And then you go to the last slide, and I started with people first. I'm going to end with people last, because this is something that I need all of your help on. We talk about COVID and some of the things that are going on in the Army right now. And, what we need to do, and this needs to get down to the bottom level, is build cohesive teams. And we have some things going on in the Army that we need to get after: sexual assault, sexual harassment, suicides, racism, and extremism. And these three things are things that I see from where we sit, that the Sergeant Major of the Army sees, that our senior leaders see when we bring all the wonderful things that are going on in the Army. Incredible things, incredible heroics. But these things are the things that break trust with the American people. These things are the things that harm our soldiers. And I need your help from each and every one of you on getting after this. I really do. We got to get this right. We've got to have cohesive teams. Cohesive teams are the things, are the organizations that lead on the battlefield. And on the right side of the slide is the golden triangle. And what it is every soldier, this is my squad, as the Sergeant Major likes to say, but every soldier has a squad, a section leader that cares about them. Every soldier has a buddy, and every soldier has a family member. And what we need to do is get it down to the lowest level, where within every organization, everyone's treating each other with dignity and respect, and everyone's taking care of each other. And I would argue that if everyone's treating everyone with dignity and respect and they're taking care of the things on the left will not happen, and they can't happen. But the other thing I've learned is we have to connect people. We have to connect squad leaders to soldiers. We have to connect squad leaders to their families. We have to connect buddies to soldiers. There's, especially with COVID and social distancing, we're seeing soldiers become isolated. We're seeing soldiers that don't have a support system. We see soldiers that relationships break down with their spouse, and then we see that what happens with suicide and some of the other things going on. So I need your help on that. We're going to be talking more about that, but we've got to push this down to the lowest level. We want organizations. We know when we have this right, we have cohesive teams. When every single soldier in a squad or platoon is willing to run through withering fire to get their buddy who's being carried away by the Taliban. And we don't want units where they say, hey, we never liked Smitty or Jones anyways, so just let them go. So go to the next. I think that's it for me on slides. And what I'll do is go ahead. I think I got a few minutes to take some questions. Over.
Good morning, sir. I'm Colonel Chris Budas, Chief of Staff at Fort Benning. How do you read this station?
I think I have you loud and clear.
All right, sir. Our first question from the field is the following. How do you see the Army 6 modernization priorities impacting the design of the BCTs and the divisions to address large-scale combat operation gaps if we continue to remain in a financial zero growth environment?
Yeah, I think, the thing that we're doing, first of all, zero growth, I hope it's zero growth. I'm more concerned about negative growth. And like we often talk about, a zero-sum game. And what a zero-sum game means, if we buy something new, we got to divest of things. And, you take a look at our long-range fires portfolio, and we want to build these systems that, quite frankly, are going to give us overmatch. They're going to allow us to deter great power competitors, hopefully without ever getting into conflict, or at least putting them in a position where we can have advantage. We can't buy everything. And there's going to be a lot of brigade commanders out there who have incredible, innovative ideas that they would like to put in place. There's some things that we just can't support. And we're going to have to divest of systems as we go forward. And the other thing is, every single person counts, every single dollar counts as we get into this budget situation that comes forward. I would argue the last 3 years we've had great budgets, at least by most standards. We've been able to grow the Army. We've been able to pay for readiness. We've been able to improve our housing, our installations, and we have a very, very good modernization program going right now. But we are very, very concerned, the Secretary and myself and the senior leadership, that we must modernize the Army. And that means we're going to have to make trade-offs. And so if you look at the BCTs, you look at the divisions, what can you envision? Well, if you're in the Bradley, that's going to get replaced. If you're an infantry soldier, you're eventually going to have IVAS, and you're going to have a new M4 or a new SAR. That is going to happen. If you're in aviation, it's probably going to be about 8 years. You're going to have new aircraft that have much more capability. If you're in the air defense, you're going to have mobile SURAT. All these systems are coming into place, and some of the other systems are going to be incrementally improved. But you're going to have to get used to fighting in an environment that's very, very different than what we did before. And what I mean by that is, again, I argue that we're really only contested in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and maybe one domain. And I would say that's the land, and maybe, having flown a few helicopters a couple of these places, maybe up to about 1,500 feet, maybe a little further during the first part of the war when there was a surface-to-air missile threat. But having flown an F-15 at 30,000 feet in Afghanistan, I did not feel very contested, flying around there. It was really pretty cool. But, same thing. We were able, we weren't contesting the sea. We just put our stuff on ships. We didn't even think about it. We get it to the port, got on a ship. We were able to take that, to where we need to go. We weren't getting jammed. We weren't worried about them, too much taking away the space capabilities we had. We really didn't have cyber challenges. All this stuff is going to come together. And the other thing you're going to see a shift is in, like some people look at higher level headquarters as overhead. And some of them are, but reality is, if you're going to fight a theater war, and you don't want to fight one, but you have to be ready to fight one to avoid it, and you're going to be using hypersonic missiles, and you're going to be integrating that across domain fires, and you're going to be doing a lot of these type things, and you want to bring partners and allies together and have interoperability with them, and you want to tie sensors to shooters together. The structure above the BCT is going to change. And we're trying to figure out what the right structure is for that. Who decides if you want to shoot a hypersonic missile that goes, thousands of nautical miles? How will that work? Who makes those type of calls, and how is that integrated? All that stuff is going to change. as we move in the future. But one thing will not change in the Army: the soldier will still be the centerpiece of the United States Army. Highly trained, disciplined, and fit soldiers are what it's all about. And we are going to equip them with the best technology we can give them to make sure they can do their mission. But I don't see any cases where we're going to eliminate soldiers from being the centerpiece of the battlefield.
So our next question from the field is, what areas concern you the most about our near-peer competitors when it comes to tactical overmatch they may have over our forces?
Yeah, as we take a look at both the Chinese and the Russians, the Chinese are changing their ground forces. They used to talk about mass has equality or numbers. They're a very, very large army. They are increasing their technology. They're increasing the modernization. They're making their armies more professionals, and so we just need to be aware of that. And if you take a look at our modernization priorities, both with Russia and China, is that they have this concept, anti-access air denial capability, that will prevent us from taking advantage, possibly our advantage, our maritime forces, our air forces. And I can envision, again, hopefully this is you want to avoid conflict, but part of the way you avoid conflict is have the capabilities to penetrate these anti-access bubbles or capabilities, if you will, and we're going to have the capabilities to do that.
Yes, sir. Our next question from the field is, can you describe or define what winning looks like for the Army during competition as part of MDO?
Yeah, when I look at what winning looks like, is we don't come outside of the competition phase. And even as we looked at multi-domain operations, one of the changes or concerns I had, and again, we always want to fight, and we need to, and I want to be real careful, because some people go, hey, we're not about competing, we're about war fighting. That's what we do, and we make sure we can war fight and we get that right. And I absolutely believe at the tactical level, if you're a commander or a battalion or a brigade or a division, you got to make sure your organization can fight, and that will be deterrence. But to me, what we want to do is be strong enough to have strong partners, allies with lots of capabilities, to understand how the information environment works, so we can operate in this new, this new phase that we're in with great power competition. And if we get to conflict, or we get close to conflict, we can resolve that conflict without a great power war. And no one wants that. The Chinese don't want that. The Russians don't want that. But people can miscalculate if they're not careful, and then get themselves in trouble. And we want to avoid those type things. And so, what we want to do is, what winning looks like in competition is, the world order that we all enjoy, the freedoms that we enjoy, and many of our allies and partners enjoy, remains in place. And we limit the amount of conflict, and we limit the amount of violence that's throughout the world.
Sir, our last question, and we'll go into your final comments. Is there any discussion on executing both BCAP and CCAP in the Compo 2 and Compo 3?
Yeah, I think each of the compos are, I would say they're in the way. First of all, we got tremendous leaders leading in the Guard and Reserve, and they are watching what they can implement from these programs. And again, it's almost a three-step type dance. We ran BCAP the first time we ran it. We did it as a pilot. We did it with the alternate lists for the combat arms, infantry, and armor, just to get an idea of what it would look like. We ran it again, full up, and we got some pretty good results that we really were pretty happy with. We're running another time. And from that, we built the Colonel's Assessment Program. I quite frankly think, if you're going to command in our Army, there should be some type of assessment, some type of process. I mean, because this is the most important thing we have in the Army. And again, we're not businessmen, we're not out there, but no business would ever consider hiring someone to run a company based on a few people looking at a resume for a couple of minutes. I just can't see that. So I think we can learn from how other people do it. I would suggest, at least from the data that I've seen on BCAP, we had a pretty good program before. We probably had about an 85, 87% solution, and that's good. But we don't want to be just good in the Army. We want to be great. And we want a 97, 98, 99% solution. And we got to figure out how we do that. And then the other thing about BCAP is, and even CCAP as it comes on board, we are a learning organization. And some of the feedback that we got from BCAP, first of all, almost 97 to 98% of the people thought it was a much better process, which is pretty good when you come up with something new. We also offered coaching for people that just wanted to get better at their job, which was interesting. But what's the most interesting to me was the people that were not ready for command, whether they had good OERs or whatever, when to go into the process. The people, they were the lowest amount of people to take coaching. And that's an interesting kind of thought about, the people that tend to do, at least what I've seen, the best in the Army. People that want to learn at every single level, that never think they have it all down. Like every single day they're trying to get better. Every single day they're trying to, increase their game. They're trying to learn. They're looking for mentors. They're looking for coaching. They are not satisfied with the level of, competence that they have in their job and the level of, whatever it is. They're trying to get better every single day. And those are the type of people we want leading our troops. And those are the people that end up doing the best. So we see that. And then for the Guard and Reserve, I would like to see, they may have to modify that program, but I would like to see something that meets that intent, that we are trying to get the best people, the most qualified in place. And the other thing as we went through the process with BCAP, many came back and said, geez, I wish I knew this before. And so what we're doing is we're pushing that back, so the type of assessment that you're getting in BCAP, you'll get at CGSC. You'll start to get that at the Captain's Career Course. And so all along, as you come out of ROTC, West Point, OCS, there'll be assessments making you better every single day. You get to the Captain's Career Course, you've got a small resume. We start competing for talent right there. You get to CGSC, again, trying to identify those holes in your swing that you can work on and get better every day. So you're not a great writer. Well, we don't wait till you're in BCAP to find out you can't write to the level that we need in the senior levels, or you're not the best speaker. So we don't wait till you're going up for colonel to do that. All along the way, we're trying to improve those skill sets. They're going to make you a much better leader. So when you arrive at that time, you are ready to go. Over.
Thank you, sir. And any closing comments?
Yeah, I just want to, say to y'all, and I told you at the beginning, we live in very, very challenging times. It's probably no secret. There's an election coming up, maybe in the next 50 some odd days. We are called on to be apolitical. We need to stay out of the politics. And even at this level, if you've seen some of the things that have been said, or even I've said, is anything we say or do will have a political context. But we have to do the right thing the right way. And remember that we are apolitical. We are not Democrats, not Republicans. When we are in our military uniform, we are American soldiers, and we need to remain that way. And for all you out there, I'm just very, very proud of what our soldiers do every single day, our non-commissioned officers and officers. There's no one better in the world. This is a very, very challenging time, and I'm just amazed at what our soldiers continue to do during some of the most challenging time. I just want to thank you personally as Chief Staff, as your Chief of Staff of the Army. Thank you.
Sir, thank you very much for your remarks. For the group, please back out of this session and then click into General Garrett's presentation for the next portion of this conference. Thank you.
Thank you.